Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Delighted to be joined by Chrisna and Bill, both Blue Cross Blue Shield workers. If you don't know, while the UAW strike was going on, Blue Cross Blue Shield healthcare workers were also on strike. Unfortunately, that got a little buried because obviously the UAW was stealing the thunder. But you guys were on strike for 11 weeks until recently a deal was struck. So let me give some of the details of the tentative agreement, which you guys will be voting on. Over the course of the contract, 19% wage increase. The main thing is bringing down the insane progression to top pay from 22 years to 5 years. So those are the main things, and tighter language on preventing outsourcing. You also get $1,000 what they're calling inflation protection bonuses in each year of the contract. So I don't know, to people who are just looking at it from the outside, sounds decent. 19% is a decent number. Language against outsourcing, and 22 years down to 5 years. But I know we need to actually talk to the workers and look closer at the contract. So first, tell us how long you both have been with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and what are your thoughts on those main takeaways?
Do you want to go first, Bill, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can go first, Kristen.
All right. So I've been with Blue Cross 4 years in January. For me, I have some concerns because I work on the help desk. So when your doctor calls to check on your claims because something's wrong, he talks to me or to one of my reps. They call me when they can't understand what's going on. And the way that this is structured right now, our CSR2s, who are those people who are taking those calls, are going to bump up to $22.50 an hour. I will be bumping up to $23.50 an hour. If one of them gets the 7% increase that is proposed in this contract, then they make more than I do. Even if they just walked in the door yesterday, they're going to make more than I do. Throughout the life of this contract, no matter what I do, they're going to make more.
The 7% increase is per year, or
for promotion. It's a promotion bonus. It's a promotion increase rather than the standard 5%. Mm-hmm. So with their first promotion, because even though I have 4 years in the company, I'm getting bumped up to that $23.50 pay grade with anybody else. So somebody who's been there, say 4 years, they're also going to get bumped up to that 23. So now they're making the same amount of money as me. And a CSR2 that's bumping up to $22.50 is going to make more than us if they get promoted to the help desk.
Can you explain for people the CSR2 versus CSR3? What's the difference?
Okay, so CSR2 is a regular phone rep that handles basically claims calls in my department. I work in provider servicing. So they're going to be the people when your doctor is saying, wait a second, there shouldn't have been a copay on this, and there was, and they're calling to find out. They're going to talk to those CSR2s. If that CSR2 doesn't understand what's going on, they're going to call me and say, hey, Chrisna, I'm stuck. Can you look at this claim with me and help me figure out what's going on?
Got it. So the CSR, the promotions seem that the contract seems that the CSR2 walking in the door would basically reach your pay level. If you've been there longer, you'd be on the same scale.
They'd be more than me.
Oh,
if they were promoted to my position, they're going to make 50 cents more an hour than I do right off the gate just from the promotion.
Okay. Gotcha. And Bill, do you see similar issues?
I do see similar issues. I happen to be one of those folks that's actually hit the max. Hit the max many years ago. I want to say probably 12 years ago. That's a conservative estimate. It could be longer than that. Kind of lose track over time. And since that time, myself, each contract, they would go ahead and they would bump up the pay grades by 1.25%, which means that for the last 12 years plus, I've gotten 1.25% times 4, so maybe 6% over 12 years. Looking at these wage increases, when you talk about maximum people, they have a 5% wage increase the first year, 5% wage increase the second year, and then they want to give us a lump sum, what they call a longevity bonus. Now, they've given longevity bonuses to offset having to pay people on a higher grade more. I'm actually a grade higher than Chrisna is. And
to be clear, you've been there 26 years.
Yes.
The way it was before, correct me if I'm wrong, you had to work 22 years to get to top pay?
Oh, no. When I started working there, the pay scales were a lot different. Every year, they would go ahead and they bump up the top of scale by 3%.
Okay.
So it took longer to get to the top, but it didn't take nearly as long as these people did. And when I hired in, promotion bonuses were 10%.
Okay.
When I went from CSR2 to CSR4, I did that in a fairly quick progression. So I had like 20% in 1 year because it happened so quickly. So I actually got to jump a lot further than a lot of people. Nowadays, they don't want to continue to go ahead and offset inflation with those 3% upgrades. And I think that's concerning. At least in our area, there is no option for progression beyond my spot unless you're a skilled trade. If you work in the building, on the building, they're a higher pay grade, obviously, because they have a specific skill set. But that's the only opportunity to move up. If they talk about wanting to go ahead and, we want to get higher level union positions, but the only way to do that is to go get people into those positions and then have them sign a union card. And then they have to go ahead and have a percentage of that group sign the union cards. And that's pretty difficult with the NBU.
Right.
They have several perks that they don't want to give up.
Right. And let me ask you, Chrisna, because, when I was covering the UAW strike, people wanted basically the same pay for the same work. But in your situation, it seems that you do something different at, the CR3 level. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, than CR2. So it's not the same work. It's not really the same job. It might require different skills, yet they are basically giving someone who does different work with less time, less seniority, more pay. You are, under UAW. Do you have any communication from the UAW? Why that? Or do you have any? Let's rephrase. Do you have any communication from UAW? Because obviously they were focused on the auto fight.
Yeah.
But is there any explanation to why you'd be getting paid less with more time on the job for a different job?
I did pose that question, and I don't want to say that it seems like it wasn't considered. Like maybe they didn't math it before they agreed to it. Because the pay increase alone is, astronomical for some of us. Not so much for Bill, because he's been there for so long. But when you consider that a lot of our people are hiring in at $18 an hour, they're automatically getting, those CSR2s, they're getting jumped up to $22.50. Like, this looks like amazing to them, right?
And what was your pay increase jumping you up to?
Mine is $250.
Okay.
Because right now I'm at $20.98.
And I should just let the audience know, Blue Cross in 2022 made $1.5 billion with a B in profit. Go on.
So
for a nonprofit company.
For a nonprofit company, yeah.
Gotta love those nonprofits. By the way, you don't have to get into this. I will. Your governor happens to be Mrs. Blue Cross Blue Shield. Her father was the CEO of the company for many years. I'm saying that, not them. Go ahead.
Well, it's absolutely true, though.
Yes.
I mean,
Governor Whitmer. Yeah.
Yes.
So as far as communication from the union, I know that Bill probably agrees with me in that we didn't get as much as we would have liked. And I think it was made worse by the fact that all of the autos business was out there for everybody to see. You know, the public knew where exactly everything was at every step of the way. Some of us, this was our first strike. I mean,
Right.
Bill wasn't there for our last strike. This is the first strike Blue Cross has had in 30 years.
Wow.
So even with previous union experience somewhere else, your odds are you've never been through a strike, right? So we're all looking at the media coverage and going, oh, well, Ford and GM have gotten this and this on the table. I wonder where we're at.
Right.
So,
And that's exactly it. That's a very big issue. I think the communication is old school thinking or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Was, back in the 30s and the 40s when they formed these unions, there wasn't that immediate access to information everywhere. You didn't have that opportunity for information overload. Well, times are changing and people have new expectations that they didn't have back then. They expected your leaders to take care of it and then communicate as it went along. And I've said before, if I'm working and they're negotiating, okay, I'm wondering what's going on, but I'm still making my money and I'm still, it's acceptable. You can go ahead and communicate when you can communicate. But if we're out on the line, there needs to be weekly communication from all levels, not just the local heads, but there needs to be something from the UAW, something that says and tries to push these companies into helping us out.
So it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're seeing, Status Coup live from the UAW picket line and weekly broadcasts from Sean Fain, all the energy, everyone's revved up. They're getting updates, almost on the daily. And you guys feel like the ugly stepsister or child.
Pretty much.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see how that would be tough. I guess devil's advocate is this was an unprecedented on their end, striking at all three at the same time. But for the future, if you're also going to have, a simultaneous strike at one of your, companies, you need to be doing the same type of communication and the same type of organizing.
Exactly.
I totally agree. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot more pressure on the autos. You look at they make more of an impact on the economy than Blue Cross does.
Right.
But
with all due respect to you, I would say you guys make more of a negative impact, not your fault, but because one of the biggest sources of bankruptcy is medical bankruptcy in this country.
No, I agree. And well, in certain ways we could debate on that. Certainly, Blue Cross Blue Shield is one of those situations where, unlike most insurers, we have a cap and we have participating providers and they write off there's a agreement between us and the providers that we have this amount that they're going to accept. So we are trying to keep the cost down so that people are not having that medical bankruptcy issues. When you look at that's an employer issue, not necessarily a Blue Cross issue and what they offer their employees. So it really comes down to corporate America going ahead and giving the financial bankruptcy on the individuals that have medical issues, not necessarily the insurance companies.
Right. And let me ask you, because obviously, there's the short-term issue. Workers deserve to make more. So you have, I would say a decent increase. Obviously, there's issues with who's getting, more quicker that we've talked about. But you got the 19% wage increase. You have $1,000 for some.
For some.
Yeah.
For some.
When we look at what I'm going to get for an increase, I'm going to get 10%. Okay, inflation has been 19% over the last 3 years. I'm not even getting half of that to make me whole.
Right.
So, yes, if you're early on in your career with Blue Cross, this is a wonderful increase for you. If you've been there for some time, it's not necessarily.
And I've heard similar complaints actually about the auto contract, that it's great for the newer workers, but legacy workers got the shorter end of the stick. Sounds like, similar complaints here.
Oh, I think that they're very similar. I think that when you look at the labor uprising that we've had, or you want to call it uprising, I guess it's a little strong, but the labor movement that we've been having in the last, 6 months, year, and I see more and more of it, I think we all have the same issues. I think it all comes down to the same things. You got outsourcing, you've got wages, you've got healthcare, and that's just another thing. They raised our healthcare. They raised the cost that we have to pay the company that actually goes ahead and supplies it more money. So now I'm getting a wage increase of 10%, but now I'm going to have to pay more for my insurance, which I work for the company for. Now, don't get me wrong; it's not as much as some people have to pay for theirs, but it's still an increase over what I was getting before for no benefit to me beyond what I already have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the additions to the coverage that we're getting. Let's just say that at the stage of life that Bill and I are at, individually, not together, just want to clarify that. I know his wife. I love her. She's great. But the stages of life that he and I are at, the benefits that they've added don't really do much for us. Like, I do not need fertility treatment. I'm almost home free. I have two 17-year-olds that are about to be 18. Bill is in a similar boat. Like,
Right.
So,
and don't get me wrong, it's an important piece, but I don't think it's worthy of the increase that they're going to put on us for the to pay for that.
Yeah, and not utilized by a large enough
a majority of the
of
people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. That should be something they're covering, not passing off the cost to you.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Because like I'm not in I'm 44, so I'll put it out there, and I am actually at the young end of our seniority. We do have some 20 and 30-year-olds, but overwhelmingly, we're not talking about a company where people filter through, right? A lot of people think in terms of, other employers that they know. We have people at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan right now with 40, 50 years of seniority.
Wow.
Literally. My 4 years puts me in the bottom 30.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so top heavy.
Right.
Oh, we are way top heavy. I mean, when you saw the reduction of our union capacity from 5,000 members down to 1,100, 1,300, somewhere in there, you've seen an erosion of our, not only that, but of our ability to actually bargain. I mean, where's the tactic in that?
For those that don't know, how long did it take for that erosion from 5,000 down to 1,100 take, and what were the main
I'm just saying it's maybe 5 years, 10 years at top.
Not even.
I mean, they
because when I
started
started
buyouts.
in 2020, there was just in provider. I can only speak to that because we didn't really get to move around floors, but the second floor was full.
Well,
and
yes,
provider was where everybody wanted to be. By the time 2022 rolled, maybe mid 2021, end of 2021, there was literally so many people on that floor that they couldn't put me on that floor when I started.
Wow.
By the time I moved downstairs, there was 10 people left.
But when we're talking about
are these people where their jobs are being outsourced, or they're just
they left?
Okay.
They just left.
They left, and there was no replacements. Instead, we end up outsourcing to other companies to pick up the slack, and for workers that are actually staying at home and working during a pandemic, that wasn't even offered to us. So
we were told it was not an option.
And that's another thing I wanted to talk about. They seem hell-bent on folks working in the office when, as far as I can tell, most of these jobs could be done remotely. I saw some language about that in the contract. Are there more options for remote work? in the new contract?
We don't know.
Exactly. I
It
mean,
just
they
says if your
started
department is
it.
eligible.
Right. So it's something relatively new, and again, it's something they've drug their feet on. MIOSHA actually fined them $7,000 for making us stay there. So.
Oh, what a fine! 7,000 for 1.5 billion profit for making you risk your life.
Well, and the last article I read on that was that Blue Cross was appealing that option, that fine.
Of course. I want to talk about outsourcing because that's been a big concern. All I saw in the contract was tighter or stronger language on outsourcing. That doesn't
We've
really
had
sound...
language for outsourcing. I mean, the fact of the matter is we've had that for several contracts now. The last contract, they even put in a union position specifically to monitor outsourcing. Now, if you can monitor it, but if you don't have any teeth assigned with it, how are you going to enforce the fact that they're continuing to outsource or not continuing to outsource? Or if they're not willing to look at your proposals to go ahead and bring that work back in-house, what do? I mean, you can have all the language you want, but if they don't follow it, I mean, and if you don't have the opportunity if you don't have any recourse legally, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there and take it. And that's pretty much what we've been doing.
Your thoughts on that, Chrisna?
Yeah, I deal a little bit more directly with the vendor space than Bill does. And Bill, I don't know if I ever saw you during like the whole pandemic spread out thing, because literally I didn't know what most of the people that I worked with looked like until after the mask mandate stopped. But there was definitely a point as a phone representative, because I was still a CSR2 during the pandemic. There was definitely a time, because we have so many members or, so many employees that have conditions that made COVID as we knew it in 2020 to be very, very dangerous for them. So we lost quite a few people that went out on medical at their doctor's advice until we got a handle on things just to keep them safe, which is totally valid. But in that time frame, we needed those vendors on the phones, because I can't think of a day that between maybe April and December of 2020 that we didn't have 150 plus calls in the queue at any given time.
Oh, and
it was
I'm not trying to say that it wasn't necessary during the pandemic, because clearly it was. I mean, when you don't have the staff to handle the calls, then you do need to find them somewhere. And I do believe that is something that's an issue. And while I'm okay with that, what I'm not okay with is the refusal to start bringing it back. The pandemic has now been declared over. We can debate whether or not that's true too, but what we come down to is that the pandemic has been declared over. Why are we still outsourcing? Let's start bringing some of those jobs back into the house.
I think we know that.
I deal with them on a daily. Like, I deal with our offshore vendors. I deal with our domestic vendors, because we have two different companies that, in provider anyway, I'm not sure about the other areas. We have two different companies that we contract with. I've got reps in El Salvador. I've got reps in the Philippines. I've got reps in Texas and Maryland. And they're all amazing people. I'm friends outside of work with a lot of them across the board. They're great people. I do not begrudge them the living that they are able to make working for us. However, there comes a point where you say, okay, it's great that they're making good money, but I know somebody who's super qualified to do this job who could really benefit and would be fantastic, a good fit, but they can't get hired because there's no spots open, because these vendors have taken all the spots.
Right.
And when we lose one person in the union, they replace them with 3 vendor reps.
Yeah, we're not talking one for one. We're talking a
Yeah.
phenomenal difference in the amount of vendors versus the people we lose and get rehired.
And I'll
or
tell
hired.
you, it's pretty frustrating. Full disclosure, I get Blue Cross through my wife's job. It's frustrating. I got no beef with anyone from the Philippines or El Salvador, but when you're already annoyed having to go through this, no offense, bureaucratic maze, to get an answer, or you're being told why they won't cover something they should, and you really can't understand what the person is saying. I don't mean that in a nasty way, but in some cases, I can't understand really what someone on the phone is saying because they're from another country and have a heavy accent.
Do you have Blue Cross of Michigan?
No.
Do you have Blue Cross of Michigan? No. So you're a Blue Cross in another state? Because you do know that Blue Cross is not one company, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Because a lot of people don't. It's, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan is its own company, just for any viewers that don't know. Just like Empire Blue Cross of New York is their own company. Blue Shield of California, Blue Cross of California are two separate companies. We all unite under the Blue Cross Association so that when you are in a state other than the state that provides, the Blue Cross plan that provides your insurance, we have a network that connects us together so that we can say, okay, you are in Michigan, our doctors are contracted to get paid this much. We send your claim to your state and we say, this is how much we pay this doctor. And they say, okay, well, Jordan has a $10 copay and he still has $250 remaining of his deductible. So this is what you need to process this claim like. Okay, cool, thanks. We process the claim, we pay the provider, you get your EOB. Right. So we're different companies, but we're a network, so we're associated. Just so that everybody is clear that, because there are some Blue Crosses that are exclusively outsourced.
But I think this is a common problem across industries. Not that you don't want people in other, not that you don't want people in other countries to have jobs, but when you're calling and sometimes having to wait a while on the phone, this and that, and then you get someone that it's hard to communicate with, not through any fault of theirs. It's just it is what it is. Like you said, you have people in this country plenty qualified, but they don't want to pay them the extra money.
Exactly. And
that's a whole nother thing too.
When you go ahead and you call, it's frustrating for you. But think of the people that Chrisna talks to, because they're the doctors. So the doctors have to call and they get these people too. Now they have to talk to people that have no idea about medical terminology, don't understand the language. And again, no fault of their own, but don't understand the way America does their stuff. And doesn't understand when we're talking about a colonoscopy or something like that, because it's medical terminology that they're just not equipped to handle. I mean, so even the people that you go to, they have just as frustrating a time dealing with a vendor who doesn't speak as well as also.
Gotcha. And overall on this contract, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you guys think UAW kind of mailed it in on this, or I don't want to say mailed it in, but didn't fight as hard on this that they did for their main contract.
Well, I don't know whether I'm going to say that or not, but I will say that when I look at this contract and I look at Mack Trucks, they didn't like their contract either. They turned that down. And then you've got the MGM in Detroit. They turned their first contract down that was brought to them. I think maybe it's something that we have to look at turning down and see where we go from there, just because on a whole, when you look at it as anybody that's going to work for Blue Cross at any point in time, this will help you now, but in 5 years or 8 years or whatever it is, you become maxed out, you're going to be in the same boat, and Blue Cross is going to have the same expenditures on labor. They just don't want to continue increasing the expenditures on labor. If you have a defined amount that you're going to pay your top and you're not going to pay them anymore over that course of the contract, you're not going to have your costs increasing, and that's all they're concerned about is controlling their costs.
Yeah.
And except for when it comes to paying the CEO.
Right.
Of course. And
$17 million, right?
Right. And what are you hearing from coworkers? Obviously, that's not necessarily representative of how the vote will go, but are you hearing, for the most part, people are satisfied, dissatisfied, want more information?
Well, they all want more information, but I
Yeah.
think satisfied or dissatisfied depends on where you are in the stage of your employment. If you just started, like we had some people that started a month before we did, before we went on strike, and they're thinking, oh, this is great. Let's go ahead and vote this in so we can get back to work and start making some money.
Well, be
And
fair
then you
though,
have
Bill, because a couple of them are saying that it's good for them, but they're still planning to vote no for us.
right.
So
Right, we do have some that are thinking that way, and but you can't go ahead and fault anybody for any of their reasoning for voting for or against it. If it's purely economic, it's just as valid as somebody who is looking at the outsourcing.
Exactly.
Whatever's important to you is what you got to vote on. And if I talk to the people that I know that I've known for 20 years or so, none of them want to vote for this. In fact, our local hasn't voted and ratified a contract yet. We've voted every single one down that I have ever voted on. The Detroit local is the one that usually determines whether or not we're going to get the contract.
they
Gotcha.
outnumber us about 10 to 1. So
Gotcha. And for people who, maybe this is a dumb question, but for people who might wonder this, why is healthcare workers under the United Auto Workers as your union?
Well, I'm not entirely sure how that came to be, other than the fact that, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan is the insurer for the autos. I mean, everything comes through us. We own those contracts, basically, if you want to look at it from a purely simplistic point of view. We own the contracts for the autos. The other states will go ahead and they'll implement things for them. They'll pay the claims. They'll maybe service them, and we pay the other states to do that. But the contracts all flow back to Michigan. So every single one of those contracts is paying a premium to Michigan, not necessarily these other states. So
and UAW itself, like
right.
the actual union, we hold their.
Through them.
So what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but I have heard that the UAW in and of itself preferred to have an organized insurance company.
Oh, I would not be surprised. I have not heard. That seems logical.
Yeah.
Considering the scope of the people that were covered by the UAW with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and and that's still partially true, because when you look at the retirees and the people that went to the VIBA, they're actually handled by an outsourced group. So you have them being handled by people that are saying they're Blue Cross but aren't. And then we have to fix the problems for the other people who don't have access to everything that we have access to. So they're basically just taking calls and not really doing anything more with it.
Gotcha. And what do you think overall of the broader strategy of the UAW? Obviously, they're talking about trying to organize all these non-union auto plants, but they're also talking about trying to line up the expiration of contracts.
I think that's a great thing. I think it's great. I think we said at the same time, jinx, Chrisna. When we look at it, first of all, I'm in favor of anything that's not in the end of the year, because let's face it, yes, it's cold. At least up here in Michigan, it's cold. But when you look at the factors that come into play during that time, you've got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas, you've got people worried about how they're going to make their ends meet, how they're going to go ahead and provide for their children for Christmas time. And that's something that the companies can very definitely use in their favor to go ahead and put pressure on you to accept something, just so that you can afford to give your kids presence for the year. So I love the idea of moving everybody, every union, to May 1st. I think it's a great spot. I think if you go ahead and unite everybody, then the power actually shifts to the labor movement. And you have all these companies that are going to strike at the same time. That will shut down the economy. So something's going to happen. And so I love it. I think it's great.
Gotcha.
And the UAW is actually going a little bit further too. when we were on the line, there were a couple of people from International that came down. And because I do have the close relationship with some of our vendor people, that, you know, whether people think it's right or wrong, I mean, it's fine. They're just amazing people, and I really enjoy them as humans. They're funny. They're great to talk to. You know, it's just like internet friends. You don't necessarily know what you're getting, but you think they're pretty cool, and you can't wait till they show up online, right?
Right.
So a couple of those people from International approached me and asked me where they work, because we're called UAW International for a reason. They are looking at pushing into these countries that have these call centers and organizing these call centers even to work for better wages for them, which is fantastic because it improves their standard of living. And in a way, it kind of de-incentivizes American corporations to push your job overseas, because now they're not only subject to international law, but they're also subject to fair labor standards.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, I have had mixed feelings about it, but in all honesty, I think that if there's ever a time in American history that this can happen, and it can truly be humanitarian, like not just for Americans, across the board, we need to really shift from pro-corporation to pro-human and get back to actually taking care of the citizens of this world and making sure that everybody has good opportunities, like full stop, period.
That's a very good point. And the thing is, we're looking at a labor movement, again, resurgence, because of the things that we're seeing being won by these companies like UPS and the UAW for the autos. You know, this is, in my view, this is a part of a 100-year cycle, because we're coming around to time when they started organizing in the 20s and 30s. And, you know, companies have a very short memory about what happens. You know, for 50 years maybe, they go ahead and they take care of their employees and they go ahead and give them things, but all of a sudden it starts being about money, and they start forgetting that they had to go through this to begin with, and they have to feel that pain to know that the employees are feeling the pain. But again, I mean, you got to have people that wanted to bargain in the companies. And going back to, Gretchen Whitmer and her father being the former CEO, the best contracts were when he was the CEO. The people at the top, when we were going through those contracts, my first early years, I thought, oh, well, it's this and this and this. But when you look at the people that were in there, when the new regime came in, a lot of them left. And they left because I think, well, they were retirement age, but I also think that they left because it used to be kind of a family. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, they were thought of as family from the top down, and it's not that way anymore. It just isn't.
Yeah, you could transfer that over to the entire United Corporations of America, because I think people think I'm crazy, but I think that movie in the 1980s, Wall Street, with Michael Douglas and Greed is
I love
good.
that movie.
Well,
I love that movie.
I think it got into the water supply, if you know what I mean. And I think,
couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I was just watching that like a week or two ago, and I had a real epiphany, because that came out when I was in high school. And so, I wanted to be Gordon Gekko. I thought that was the coolest thing. But when you look back at it 35 years later and you see what's happened because of that statement, you can see that corporate America has no longer had any interest. They embody that. They embody greed is good, and it became a sickness. I mean, we started with deregulation. I mean, I used to be a big supporter of Ronald Reagan, loved the guy. And the more I hear, as I get older and realize more things and have more experience under my belt, I realize that as much as I wanted to be that guy is what has torn down the labor movement to begin with, and has gone ahead and caused people to be in financial pain.
It's funny because you always hear from older people, oh, wait till you get older, you'll turn conservative. I actually think it's turning the opposite way. I think a lot of people who might have, like you know, thought Reagan or Republicans were the responsible ones, or not that I'm saying Democrats are, they're all one party to me. But
Right.
I think a lot of people, because of the economic, you know, just Hunger Games we live in, are turning further left and further, you know, critical of capitalism because it's exploiting the workers.
I would agree with that, and the current GOP specifically, they have shown no willingness to actually govern anymore. I mean, it comes down to if you can't point to any one of those people in the GOP and say that they've got a big donor that's giving them a lot of money from a corporation, I'd be surprised. You know, they all got paid off. I mean, and that's why things don't change. You know, that's why one of the things that I think is great and would be a great changer is the law that they're putting in California that striking workers can get unemployment.
Yes.
That would be a game changer for labor as a whole. If we could get a federal law to say that, I mean, because then if you're on strike, it supplements what you're getting from the union, which is, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's much more than it was before. You know, I'm happy to have what they've given me for the strike assistance, but if I could go again, make up the difference with unemployment, then I'm not having that financial pain, and I can sit back and I can take a moment and I can say, well, this is a good contract or this isn't a good contract, because I'm not under the gun to go ahead and put food on the table for my family.
Well, I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, because shadow Democratic presidential nominee Gavin Newsom, who clearly is, you know, on deck when if Biden drops out. I don't think he is going to really push that because the donors won't like it so much. My last question to you both, for people who might not know, but it's important, why would you tell them that, you know, a deal for healthcare workers, even though I'll be open, I'd like to get rid of the private healthcare industry, convert you all to, you know, workers in a government-run system with, you know, a just transition. But with that out of the way, how does this affect the broader economy? And if you guys aren't getting a good deal, you know, why does that matter?
Well, I think it shows that, at least from an office perspective, I mean, you see it all the time with manufacturing, but I think you need to see, and you asked earlier about, you know, organizing people that aren't in the auto industry. I think because you have the dwindling membership in the auto industry, because they're losing people too. I mean, every time they get a chance to upgrade with their technology, people lose jobs. They're not as strong as they were before. And I think it's important for us to win a good contract and show others that it's possible when you're not on the line putting a car together, that there is fairness in corporate America, and the unions are the only place that you're going to get that. Otherwise, you know, I've worked in health insurance my whole adult life. I worked for Travelers beforehand. They went and they got bought by United Healthcare, and then merged with Metropolitan Life, and then ultimately got bought by United Healthcare. Got laid off there. Worked at a TPA. Then I came to Blue Cross. Blue Cross, when I got here, it was the best paying job I could possibly get. But now, I mean, it's hard to say that longevity is something that you can continue. And I just lost my train of thought.
Because you have a lot of thoughts on this, Bill.
Oh, I do. Trust me.
And Chrisna, same question to you.
So for me, like Bill, most of my adult life I've spent working in health insurance. I worked for a third-party administrator before I came to the Blues. I banked my retirement on this company because the benefits are amazing. My coworkers are fantastic. And I truly believe that what we do, at least in my department, I can't work in member because I too empathetic, like that, too many heartstrings to tug. But in provider, I get the opportunity to make sure that people's claims are being taken care of correctly. So they're not, oh, my husband has cancer and here's a $75,000 bill that the insurance company denied. We get blamed for that, but your provider billed it wrong.
Right.
Well, I get the opportunity to fix that before you ever see it.
Right.
We literally were reclassified as a financial institution during the pandemic because that is what we are. Here in Michigan, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan is the largest insurer in the state. Us processing claims means a lot of your hospitals can stay open to treat you. As much as everybody hates the insurance company isn't always the bad guy.
Right.
Don't hate the
Your
play, hate
employer
the game.
chooses that.
Right.
They choose your plan. They choose your premium. They choose how much they're willing to contribute toward you. We just offer the benefits. We offer the network. They make the call.
Right.
So, as far as us being the bad guys, I can see it from a certain point of view, but the reality is that the more people organize, the more these corporations see that we are no longer willing to tolerate the status quo. The benefits that Bill and I enjoy as Blue Cross members, we don't pay much for our insurance. We really don't. But that should be the norm. Like
right.
Public healthcare, public or insurance instead of a socialized fine.
Will we lose Priscilla?
If these corporations were willing to contribute to you as a human being and say, you are worth paying for, instead of charging you $200 a week to insure your family, we're only going to charge you $20 and we're going to pick up the difference.
Well, and that happens a lot of the time when you look at your premiums, even when you talk about people that don't, that's something else they have to understand is that what they're paying for there often is to some degree augmented by the company. You're never, well, most often you're not paying the full price for the insurance that you're getting. But when we come down to, what's important, why it's important that we win, it's important that we win a good contract so that they can go ahead and organize more people in office settings and that we can make it a standard across the nation, that people don't have to put up with low wages, don't have to put up with poor sick time policies, that people don't have to go ahead and pay for all their insurance, that they get a piece of the pie that they're working so hard to make sure this company is successful. And the more that we do that, you see the autos talking about trying to unionize Tesla and Nissan and all these other non-union car companies. Well, I think if we can win a good contract through for Blue Cross, I think we can start looking more towards more and more offices where people are being oppressed by the over need for more and more profit.
Yeah.
To end, I would say, Chrisna, what you were trying to say was don't hate the player, hate the game. And
essentially that's what it is, because you're right, Jordan. This is the United Corporations of America. At the end of the day, if we don't fight for basic human rights, like healthcare in whatever form it comes in, for a fair price, then what are we doing?
Right.
Well, I mean, we already pay for the research and development for drugs across the world. Look at America, the only really established country that doesn't have a price control for drugs. So where's the research and development being paid for? It's by us.
Yeah.
Right. I hope you guys will update me because potentially this will be voted down. So we could have you back on as things develop. Thank you so much, Chrisna and Bill, Blue Cross Blue Shield in Michigan.
Thank you very much.